Ever get that feeling?
Yeah.
Like you've just crammed a whole bunch of new info in your brain.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe for a big presentation you have coming up.
For sure.
Or you're finally trying to pick up that hobby you've been putting off forever.
Absolutely.
I even get it sometimes just trying to remember someone's name right after I meet them.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that.
It's like, how do I make this stick? Not just for like right now,
Right.
but like actually lock it in for the long term.
Yeah. That's the big question, isn't it?
It really is. And thankfully, this deep dive is going to tackle that exact question for you.
Okay, awesome.
We're looking at a paper that gets into the best possible timing for when to revisit information, so it really stays put in your memory.
Perfect.
We're digging into a paper called Using Spacing to Enhance Diverse Forms of Learning. Review of Recent Research and Implications for Instruction.
Got it.
It's by Carpenter and a whole team of researchers from back in 2012.
Okay.
So think of this as your personal shortcut to understanding the science behind better studying and learning more effectively. We've gone through and pulled out the key insights that you can actually use in your own life no matter what it is you're trying to learn.
That's great.
And the core idea we're going to be talking about today is this thing called spacing.
Spacing.
You know how people always say it's better to space out your study sessions instead of cramming everything in at once?
Right.
Well, it turns out that's not just some old wives' tale.
Not at all.
This concept, which is usually called the spacing effect,
Yeah.
has been studied by scientists for over a century.
Wow.
Like going all the way back to a researcher named Hermann Ebbinghaus back in 1885.
That's a long time.
It is a really long time, so there's a lot of research to dig through.
There is.
Okay, so the paper we're looking at talks about the difference between mass practice and space practice.
Okay.
What exactly are those?
So you can think about mass practice as like what you usually think of as cramming.
Okay,
It's when you study the same material over and over again in one big chunk of time,
gotcha.
without really any breaks. And in that case, the spacing gap, which is like the amount of time between your study sessions, is basically zero.
Okay.
Now, spaced practice, on the other hand, involves studying the same information, but you do it across multiple study sessions, and these sessions are separated by some amount of time.
Okay.
And that chunk of time is your spacing gap.
Got it.
And with spaced practice, that gap is longer than zero.
Makes sense.
The paper also mentions something called test delay.
Test delay.
Yeah, and this is the amount of time between your last study session and when you actually need to remember that information.
Oh.
Like maybe for a test or in a real-life situation when you actually have to use what you've learned.
Right. That makes sense. So just to make sure I'm getting this right,
Yeah.
if I were to spend, say, 3 hours straight going over my notes the night before a big presentation, that would be mass practice.
Exactly.
But if I reviewed those same notes for 1 hour a day for 3 days leading up to it, that would be space practice.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay, perfect. And all the research pretty much agrees that spaced practice is the better way to go if you want to remember things better, right?
That's right. Yeah, the evidence is pretty strong there.
So I used to think that spacing was mostly helpful for just memorizing simple things, like vocab lists or facts.
Yeah.
But this paper actually points out that it goes way beyond that.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
So it can help you learn more complex things too.
Definitely. Yeah, it's not just for like rote memorization.
Oh, wow.
But-
So it's not just about like memorizing facts, but it can actually help you with understanding and applying knowledge in more like sophisticated ways.
It really can. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really highlights how like the time between those study sessions helps your brain solidify that new information.
That's really interesting to think about.
It is, yeah.
And the paper mentions that this isn't just true in like lab settings.
Oh, no.
Like it's actually been shown to work in real classrooms too.
Exactly.
That's huge.
It is huge, yeah. I mean, there was a study by Sobel and some other researchers back in 2011,
Okay.
and they were working with fifth graders.
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade.
Wow.
And these kids were trying to learn the definitions of some pretty uncommon English words.
Like what kind of words are we talking here?
Like words you might see on like a really hard vocabulary test.
Oh,
Like the GRE,
got it.
words like abscond.
Abscond. Okay. Yeah, that's not exactly a word you throw around every day.
Not really.
Okay, so what did they find with those fifth graders?
Well, they found that the students who reviewed the material with like a 7-day gap between study sessions remembered the definitions way better 5 weeks later.
Okay.
Compared to the students who reviewed everything right away.
So even though a week might feel like a long time to wait before going back to something, it actually helps you remember it better in the long run?
It does, yeah.
That's pretty counterintuitive.
It is. It really is.
Okay, so we've talked about these spacing gaps.
Yes.
But how long should they actually be?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It really is.
Like, is there a magic number that just works best for everyone?
Yeah.
Well, the paper talks about some research that suggests, in general, longer gaps are better for long-term retention.
Longer gaps, okay.
Yeah, for instance, there was a study by Barrick that looked at learning Spanish vocabulary.
Okay, Spanish vocab.
And they found that having a 30-day gap between study sessions actually led to better memory even 8 years later.
Wow, 8 years. That's a really long time.
That's a long time, yeah. It's pretty amazing.
It is.
And it's way better than shorter gaps, or like no gaps at all.
That's incredible to think about.
It is, yeah, but the paper also points out that it's not quite as simple as just saying the longer the better.
Right. It can't be that easy.
It can't be that easy. If you wait too long, you might end up forgetting so much of the information that going back to it won't even be that helpful anymore.
So, like, there's a point where it backfires.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a sweet spot you want to aim for.
A sweet spot, that makes sense. So how do you find that sweet spot?
Well, according to the paper, the most comprehensive study on this was done by Sapita and a few other researchers back in 2008.
Okay.
And what they did was have people learn a bunch of random facts.
Random facts.
And then they tested them after different amounts of time had passed. Some people were tested after a few days, some after a few weeks, some even after a few months.
Wow. That sounds like a huge study.
It was a really big undertaking for them.
Yeah.
But it gave us some super valuable insights.
Okay, well, what did they find?
The main thing they found was that the best spacing gap actually depends on how long you need to remember something for.
Oh, interesting. So there's no single magic number.
Not really.
No.
Okay, that makes sense.
It does, yeah. Like, for example, they found that if you only needed to remember something for a week, then a 1-day spacing gap was best.
1 day. Okay.
Yeah, but if your test was like 35 days later, then an 11-day gap was better.
11 days. Wow. And if you needed to remember it for 70 days, then a 21-day gap worked best.
So the further out the test, or, when you need to recall the information, the longer you should wait before reviewing it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like your brain needs that reminder closer to when you actually need it, not just constantly.
That makes sense.
It does, yeah.
So are there any guidelines for figuring out this spacing thing?
Yeah, actually, there's a pretty useful rule of thumb.
Okay, tell me.
The optimal spacing gap is usually somewhere between 10 and 20% of the total time you need to remember something for.
10 to 20%. Okay, so give me an example of how that would actually work.
Sure. So let's say you have a presentation in 3 months.
Okay.
That's about 90 days, right?
Right.
So according to this rule of thumb, you'd want to review your material for the first time somewhere between 9 and 18 days after you initially put it together.
That's a really helpful guideline.
It is, yeah. It gives you a starting point.
Yeah, definitely. Now, the paper also talks about different types of spacing schedules.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Like fixed versus expanding schedules.
Right.
What's the difference between those?
So if you've got more than 2 study sessions planned, a fixed schedule means you space out those sessions evenly.
Evenly. Okay.
Yeah. So for example, you could decide to review something every week.
Got it.
And an expanding schedule, on the other hand, means you gradually increase the time between your reviews.
So the gaps get bigger each time.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe you review after 1 day, then after 3 days, then after a week, and so on.
Okay. I can picture that. So does the research tell us if one of these approaches is better than the other?
It's not totally clear yet. The research on that is a bit mixed.
Really?
Yeah, some studies suggest that expanding schedules might be slightly better for remembering things in the short term,
Okay.
while fixed schedules might be a bit better for the really long term.
Interesting.
Yeah, but honestly, we need more research to be really sure.
So it's not really settled science yet.
Not quite.
Okay.
But here's the important thing to remember.
What's that?
Even if you don't get the spacing perfectly right, the most important thing is that you are actually using some kind of spacing.
Okay. Any spacing is better than none.
Exactly.
That's good to know. It takes some of the pressure off.
Right.
So we've talked about all this research on spacing.
Well, yeah.
But how can we actually use it?
Yeah, that's the key, right?
It is.
Like, how can we actually put this into practice?
Exactly. Like, what are some things that learners and teachers can actually do?
Well, the paper gives a few really good suggestions.
Okay, let's hear it.
So for teachers, a big one is to include quick reviews of old material in each lesson.
Okay, so like going back over things from a few weeks ago.
Exactly. Yeah. It helps those connections in students' minds stay strong.
Right. That makes sense.
And another idea is to design homework assignments so that they include questions on topics that have already been covered.
That's smart.
Yeah, it makes sure students are seeing that information again.
Makes sense.
And the third thing teachers can do is to use cumulative exams and quizzes.
So exams that cover material from the whole semester or year.
That-
I used to dread those.
Yeah, I know a lot of students don't love them.
Right. But now I can see why they're helpful.
Definitely.
It forces you to go back and study the older stuff,
Right.
which is exactly what we've been talking about.
Exactly.
So the paper also mentioned some challenges that people might face when they're trying to use spacing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What are some of those?
Well, one common one is students just not being into the idea of cumulative exams.
Like they feel like it's too much to study.
Yeah, exactly. They get overwhelmed.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But the thing is, if they're already doing spaced review throughout the semester,
Right.
then the cumulative exam shouldn't feel as impossible.
Right. Because they've already been studying that material.
Exactly.
Okay. That's a good point.
And another challenge is that sometimes teachers might see that their students have forgotten a lot of material after a long spacing gap.
Oh, yeah.
And they might think that means their teaching wasn't effective.
Yeah. I could see that happening.
Yeah, but the research actually shows that forgetting is totally normal.
Oh.
And it can even be helpful.
Really?
Yeah, when students see that information again after forgetting it, they relearn it much faster.
Interesting.
And the last challenge the paper brings up is that a lot of traditional teaching materials, like textbooks, don't really encourage spaced practice.
They kind of just go through one topic and then move on to the next.
Yeah, exactly.
Without ever going back.
Right. So the paper suggests that teachers should try to add in examples and questions from earlier lessons.
Okay, so like mixing things up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And they specifically talk about something called interleaved practice.
Interleaved practice. What's that?
It's when you mix different types of problems together in like a math assignment.
Thank you.
It's basically a built-in way to do spaced practice.
Got it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
What are the biggest takeaways for our listeners?
The main thing to remember is that spaced practice is really powerful.
Okay.
If you spread out your study sessions over time, you'll remember things way better in the long run.
Space practice beats cramming.
And this applies to all kinds of learning.
Yeah.
Like from memorizing simple facts to understanding really complex ideas.
Got it.
And even for learning physical skills.
Wow, so it really is pretty universal.
It is, yeah. It's a fundamental principle of learning.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the best spacing gap for you will depend on how long you need to remember the information for.
Right.
But a good rule of thumb is to use a gap that's about 10 to 20% of that total time.
10 to 20%. Okay.
Yeah, and the most important thing to remember is that any kind of spacing is better than none.
Got it. So here's something for you to think about as we wrap things up.
Okay.
Think about something you're learning right now, or something that you really want to remember for a long time.
Okay.
How could you use the ideas we've talked about today to make sure that information really sticks?
Good question.
And what specific information do you want to be able to easily recall, not just tomorrow, but months or even years from now?
Yeah, that's what we all want, right?
It is. And once you understand this principle, it can really change the way you approach learning.
Absolutely.
It's not just about studying smarter.
Yeah.
It's about learning better for your whole life.
I like that.
Me too.